House will please come to order. Those persons not having privilege of the floor will please vacate the chamber at this time, and all members and guests in the galleries will please rise as we are led in prayer this morning by Eldon Callan. Mr. Callan is the guest of the delegates from Monongalia and Preston counties.
Shall we pray? Oh Lord, we thank you for the many abundant blessings and for life itself, for the measure of health to fulfill one's calling, for substance, and for friendship. We thank you for the blessings and the ability of self-government through our elected leaders. Therefore, we ask you graciously grant our delegates wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests of issues of our times, a sense of the welfare and true needs of our people, a keen thirst for justice and rightness, confidence in what is good and fitting, the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement, personal peace in their lives and joy in their task. It is in your most blessed name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Members and guests will please remain standing as we are led in the Pledge of Allegiance this morning by the lady from the 51st, Doug Fleshauer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It looks like everybody's ready. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members and guests may be seated. Reading the Journal.
Journal of the House of Delegates, Charleston, Tuesday, January 28, 2020.
Lady in the 52nd, Doug Saipo.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of the journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as have been read.
The lady in the 52nd asks unanimous consent that further reading of the journal be dispensed with and it be approved as having been read. Are there objections? Chair hears no objections. Introduction of guests. The gentleman, the 23rd, Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I have several pages here from Boone County we'd like to recognize and introduce to the House. From Sherman Junior High School, we have Lauren Barnett, Michelle Farrell, and Madeline Michael. And also from Van Elementary School, we have Mason Joner, Oakland Bishop, Kaylee Bogus, and Tucker Kuhn. If they would all please stand and the House make them feel welcome.
The lady in the 57th, Doug Rowan.
From West Virginia's oldest county, we have with us today Alan Brill and Christopher Kim from Cape and Valley Bank, and Travis Delaplane, Gabby Newcomer, and Michelle Embry from FNB Bank. And let me also say that Gabby Newcomer is the wife of West Virginia's Conservation Farmer of the Year. So if the House would please give them a wide and wonderful West Virginia welcome.
The gentleman, the 54th, Doug Hott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have two introductions today. I'd like to ask them to stand. First, Scotty Miley from two roles. First of all, in the Grant County Commission earlier this week and now representing the Grant County Bank. And also we have George Ford with us from the Grant County Bank. Would the House make them feel welcome, please?
The gentleman, the 29th, Doug Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the gallery with us today is Marlene Reed from West Virginians for Health Freedom. So if you see her about today and she wants to talk to you, I hope you'll lend her your ear today, but let's all make her feel welcome. Thank you.
The gentleman, the 39th, Doug Bartlett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm excited to welcome some pages with us today from the Sissonville High School, Aiden Landgrebe and Michaela Query. And if they would stand also, their parents are here. Ann, who serves us in the clerk's office each and every day, and also Brad and Mary Beth Query. Let's make all these folks feel welcome. Pages, please stand. Aiden and Michaela. Thank you.
The gentleman, the 11th, Doug Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure today to have visiting from Roane County a friend of mine, Holly Terrell. She's with the First National Bank of Spencer and also a member of the Leaders Council of West Virginia Bankers Association. Let's please make her welcome.
The gentleman to 35th, Doug Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And some of these guests may get recognized a couple of times, but you know, today is West Virginia Bankers Legislative Day. We have many of them in the gallery. If they would all stand, and if the members would join me in welcoming them today. But thank you all for everything you do.
The gentleman to 51st, Doug Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Throughout the three galleries, we have some folks from the Mon-Preston Labor Council. If they would do me a favor and please stand, and if the House would make them feel welcome.
The gentleman to 61st, Doug Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Joining us today in the South Gallery, Martinsburg City Councilman Ken Collinson. Would you please stand? The House make him welcome.
The gentleman to 30th, Doug Bates.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've got some banking friends with me in the rear gallery. Caitlin Meadows, these folks are from United. Caitlin Meadows, who I met for the first time today. An old friend and my old banker from Beckley, D.F. Mock. And then Morgan Walls, who's down in Charleston now, that her dad actually coaches my son in baseball. So if they could stand and welcome them here today, please. Thank you.
The gentleman to 26th, Doug Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a dear friend in the rear gallery, Kathy Morton. Dr. Kathy Morton is the Assistant Director of the HISTA program. As you may or may not know, HISTA sends hundreds of kids to West Virginia, in West Virginia to college, tuition free. How great would it be if every county had a HISTA program in it? Something we definitely should consider. Kathy Morton, would you rise and be recognized?
The gentleman to 4th, Doug Canestraro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the South Gallery today are two friends of mine from back home in Marshall County, members of the United Mine Workers of America, John Mercer and Cliff White. If they would please stand and make the House, make them feel welcome.
The gentleman to 42nd, Doug Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Delegates Lavender Bowe, Pack, and Cooper in our South Gallery today with the West Virginia Bankers Association, President of the Bank of Monroe, Jim King, if he'll stand in the House, please make him welcome.
The gentleman to 43rd, Doug Hartman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Delegate Thompson and I, we have some bankers from Randolph County. In the West Gallery, I have Rachel Hayes from the Davis Trust Company. And in the South Gallery, Nathaniel Bonner from Citizens Bank of West Virginia. Please make them welcome.
The gentleman to 7th, Doug Barnhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not sure which gallery he's in, but we have the president of Pleasants County Bank with us today, Mr. Mike Nelson. And if he's in the gallery, I'd ask him to stand, and I'd ask the House to please make him feel welcome. Thank you.
The gentleman to 10th, Doug Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If please join the delegates from Wood County in welcoming. We have bankers from Wood County in the audience. If they'd stand, please, and the body make them feel welcome. Thank you.
The gentleman to the 17th, Doug Lovejoy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today in the South Gallery, we have many guests, including from the American Federation of Teachers, Amanda Stolzenfels, and one from Cabell County AFT who had the misfortune of being my babysitter growing up. That's Miss Amy Neal. If you'd stand up, let the House make you welcome.
Lady in the 51st, Dr. Fleischauer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is Mon County Day at the Legislature, MONONGALIA. And I want to alert your attention to something important. We have a bunch of things on our desk, but this card will get you lunch, something that is in short supply in this building that is not near too many restaurants. And I want to just tell you, it's going to be in room 252 from 11:30 to 1:30, and then also downstairs in the governor's reception from 12:30 to 1:30, and it's prepared by our wonderful Beehive Cafe from Pace. Would everyone who has come down for Mon County Day at the Legislature please stand, and would the House make them very welcome? Thank you. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 19th, Dr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of myself, Delegates Hicks, Lovejoy, and Rohrbach, we have two special guests in the South Gallery today. They are Dave Pennington and his wife, Daisy. Dave served as our Wayne County Commissioner and also 2 terms as Wayne County Sheriff. They are in the South Gallery. We also have several pages from Cerrito KANAWHA Elementary. Today, they are, if they would please stand when I call their name, they are Chris Sanders, Judson Rich, Jackson Doherty, and one who is the great-nephew of former delegate Don Perdue, Caden Cox. So everybody please give them a warm round of applause.
The gentleman from the 19th, Dr. Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And along with Robbie Thompson, I'd like to welcome several pages serving with us today from Wayne County. These pages are as follows, and I'd like for you to stand when I mention your name. It's Keely Bailey, Skylar Lyon, Emily Stewart, Faith Hardwick, Lakin Scarberry, Anna Phillips, Reese Flynn, and also a hearty welcome to Dave Pennington and his wife Daisy. Please stand and make them feel welcome.
The gentleman in the 44th, Dr. Hannah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I'm pleased to have a page with me from Webster County High School. If she would please stand, Caitlin Armentrout, if the House would make her feel welcome.
Lady in the 51st, Dr. Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I can have all my colleagues just to give me a second. This next person that I'm going to introduce has been my best friend for almost 44 years. She is my strength. She is my comforter. She is my nurse. She holds it down while I'm here in Morgantown with my 2 sons. She is my prayer warrior. She is the strongest person that I've ever come across. Having 2 open heart surgeries, 5 stents, and a stage 4 breast cancer survivor. She is what keeps me grounded. She is what, I can't even bring it into the words. Unconditional love. When I hear it, when I see it, when I feel it, it is because of my mama. So, Mom, I love you. And would you mind taking a stand? And would the House please give her a round of applause?
The gentleman from the 50th, Dr. Caputo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I have 3 introductions, if you'll bear with me today. First, I'd like to introduce a former member and a very dear friend of mine and many in this House, my friend Danny Poling from Wood County. And second on the list, Mr. Speaker, in the South Gallery, I see some folks that I had the privilege of working for over 2 decades. I was their leader in District 31. They paid my wages. There's some UMWA coal miners from District 31. I'd like to ask them to stand in the House. Please recognize my friend. And then last but certainly not least, Mr. Speaker, I am honored and privileged today as a 43-year, very proud, dues-paying union member on behalf of this entire House of Delegates We have working West Virginians from all across West Virginia, from one end of the state to the other, working West Virginians that belong to the proud, the very unified West Virginia AFL-CIO. I'd ask all my union brothers and sisters to stand in the entire house. Please give them a warm round of applause.
The gentleman, the 37th, Dr. Pushkin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today in the South Gallery, we are joined by a very dear friend of mine who we've been friends for more years than we probably care to admit. And I believe she's here with the United Steelworkers today. From Morgantown, West Virginia, Ms. Dana Diaz.
The lady in the 65th, Douglas Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't know how you follow an intro from Delegate Mike Caputo, but I'm going to try because as a proud Labor president, I have two of my executive board members here. So would Ryan Michael and Grant Prilliman, who made the courageous quest all the way from the Eastern Panhandle, stand, and will the House make them feel welcome? Thank you so much for all what you do for working families.
The gentleman, the 24th, Dr. Tomlin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of myself and Delegate Roddy Gary, I'd like to introduce a few pages we have today, if they'd stand as I announce their name. Caden Akers, Caleb Robinette, Katie Barker, Brock Carter, and Kaylee Woodruff. Would the House make them welcome? Please stand.
The gentleman, the 22nd, Dr. Jeffries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to introduce our doctor of the day is Pam Molly from Huntington, West Virginia. If the House would make her welcome.
Are there other introductions? If not, report to standing committees.
Your Committee on Energy has had under consideration House Bill 4421, Natural Gas Liquids Economic Development Act. Reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that it do pass, that it be referred to Committee on Finance.
Message or report will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Energy has had under consideration House Bill 4484 relating to the Hazardous Waste Management Fund. Reports back a committee substitute, therefore, with recommendation that the committee substitute do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security has had under consideration House Bill 4383, Facilitating Business Rapid Response to State Declared Disasters Act of 2020. Reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass, that it be referred to Committee on Finance.
Report will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Originating in the Committee on Pensions and Retirement are House Bill 4600 relating to the definition of the term member regarding distributing premium tax proceeds, and House Bill 4601 relating to distribution of premium tax proceeds to municipal policemen's and firemen's pension and relief funds. They're reported with the recommendation that they each do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Health and Human Resources has had under consideration House Bill 4356 relating to the administration of anesthetics, reported with recommendation that it do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Health and Human Resources has had under consideration House Bill 3049, improving dissemination of boiled watery advisories to affected communities. House Bill 4059, increasing access to long-acting reversible contraception. House Bill 4102, relating to opioid antagonists. And House Bill 4198, permitting a person to obtain a 12-month supply of contraceptive drugs. Reports back committee substitutes, therefore, with recommendation that the committee substitutes each do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Health and Human Resources has had under consideration House Bill 4434, West Virginia Healthcare Workforce Sustainability Act. Reports back to committee substitute, therefore, with recommendation that the committee substitute do pass and that the second reference to Committee on Finance be dispensed with.
The report to be received. Lady from the 49th.
Am I here? Yes. Okay. Mr. Speaker, the two chairs have conferred on this matter, and I now ask unanimous consent that the second reference of the bill to the Committee on Finance be dispensed with.
The lady from the 49th asked unanimous consent that the two chairs having conferred the second reference to the Committee on Finance for House Bill 4434 be dispensed with. Does the chair hear objections? The chair hears no objections. The second reference to the Committee on Finance will be dispensed with. Are there further reports to standing committees?
Your Joint Committee on Enrolled Bills has examined, found truly enrolled, and presented to the Governor for his action on January 28, 2020, Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 94, providing persons with physical disabilities ability to vote by electronic absentee ballot.
The report will be received. Reports of select committees, messages from the executive, messages from the Senate.
The Clerk of the Senate announces the passage by the Senate of Senate Bill 51, specifying forms of grandparent visitation.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Seniors, Children, and Family Issues, then the Committee on Judiciary.
The Senate has passed Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 191, creating felony offense of aggravated cruelty to animals.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
The Senate has passed Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 201, relating generally to criminal offenses of stalking and harassment.
The bill will be received, or message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
The Senate has passed Senate Bill 523, extending deadline for municipalities to offer Social Security coverage to certain municipal retirement system members.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Pensions and Retirement.
The Senate has passed Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 529, establishing limitations on claims and benefits against the state.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
The Senate has passed Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 532, distributing assets remaining in municipal policemen's or firemen's pension or relief fund on death of last retiree or beneficiary.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Pensions and Retirement. Are there further messages from the Senate? If not, resolutions, petitions, motions, bills introduced.
House Bill 4577, establishing regulation of electronic bicycles.
Lady in the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of bills introduced be dispensed with, and that each bill be considered as formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as indicated on the chamber automation system.
The lady from the 49th asked unanimous consent that further reading of bills introduced be dispensed with, and that each bill be considered as having been formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system. Are there objections? The chair hears no objections. Unfinished business. Bills on third reading.
Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 323, authorizing the Department of Administration promulgate legislative rules.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears no objection. The gentleman in the 35th, Doug CAPITO, to explain the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, everybody. Senate Bill 323 is a rules bundle from the Department of Administration. I will walk through those rules and be happy to take questions after I've gotten through each one. The first one deals with 148 CSR 12, which deals with general administration of records management preservation. The amendments to the rule update and modernize record management and storage technology definitions in that section of code. The next rule is obviously from the Department of Administration, dealing with retention and disposal scheduling. The amendments add definitions to reflect the current method of submitting and approving record retention schedules and obtaining authorization to destroy certain records. The next rule comes to us from the management of record, deals with the management of records maintained by the Records Center. That's 148 CSR 14. Clarifies requirements for the State Records Center, requires adequate description of all records maintained at the State Records Center, and provide processes for agency records managers to annually review records, inventory, and seek destruction of records that have reached the end of the retentions period. The next rule deals with exemptions from management services provided by the Fleet Management Division. As you may recall, we had a bill, HB 4015, enacted in the 2019 regular session, which required the department to implement an inventory system to track state-owned vehicles and to provide a means to review the use of those vehicles. It allowed certain agencies to request an exemption from certain management services provided by the Fleet Management Division. It lists those agencies which have been granted full or partial exemptions in that rule. Next rule deals with financial services reporting, 148 CSR 24. This rule implements the provisions of West Virginia Code Section 5A2B-1, which was enacted through Senate Bill 271, which passed 2 years ago in the regular session of this body, and which created a new shared services section within the Division Financial Services in the Department of the Administration. The rule proposes to make requirements that all state spending units provide an annual report to the newly formed organization. It requires the new organization to develop a baseline cost for the designated accounting services. It establishes certain deadlines in certain instances. It outlines the components of corrective actions where necessary, and it allows the Finance Division to provide annual training. The next rule deals with payment of fees, reimbursement of expenses of court-appointed attorneys. As you will recall, last year we passed Senate Bill 103, which I'm sure all of you remember, chapter and verse. It dealt with hourly compensation of panel attorneys. The rule details which tasks constitute attorney's work, which tasks constitute paralegal work, and which tasks are administrative tasks and therefore not reimbursable. The rule deals with the actual and necessary panel attorney expenses that may be reimbursed, and it also deals with the submission of vouchers and how those vouchers are to be accepted and the penalties that are imposed if such vouchers are not timely and properly submitted. The rule provides that persons accepting child abuse and neglect appointments will receive priority in compensation and permits those panel attorneys to submit requests for payment after each disposition hearing. Mr. Speaker, that's a summarization of the administration rules bundles. I'm happy to take questions, and I would also urge the passage of the rules bundle.
Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 95 ayes, 0 nays, and 5 members absent not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 323.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Gentleman, the 35th, Doug Capito.
Are we amending on third? Would the chair be so kind as to repeat his request of the gentleman?
The House normally makes rules bills effective from passage.
Oh, yes. Yes, sir, Mr. Speaker. I move that the bill become effective from passage.
The gentleman, the 35th's motion is that the bill be made effective from passage. Those in favor of the motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 95 ayes, 0 nays, 5 members absent not voting, 2/3 of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2419 relating to the authorization to release a defendant or a person arrested upon his or her own recognizance.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are the members is there objection to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears no objection. The gentleman, the 27th, Doug Schott, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's always a challenge to follow a stirring presentation of a rules bundle, but I think I'm up to the challenge. When we look at House Bill 2419, please keep in mind that we're dealing with individuals that are being considered for release prior to trial. In other words, these individuals have not been convicted of anything at all. And this bill addresses that situation. Current law reads as follows: when from all the circumstances the court or the magistrate is of the opinion that the defendant or person will appear as they may be required, the magistrate may release the individual upon his or her own recognizance. What the bill before you does is make that mandatory in certain circumstances. Those circumstances will be if there's a misdemeanor criminal offense that does not involve actual or threatened violence, where the victim was a minor, where the offense falls under the Uniform Controlled Substances Act, and we discussed that at length yesterday, and where it's a serious traffic offense involving 17 C-5-1 and 5-2, which involve injuries. The magistrate must release that individual on his or her own recognizance unless there's good cause shown. And if you think about good cause shown, think about it from the standpoint of the individual who appears before that judge or magistrate, and whether or not the magistrate thinks there's some reason why that person shouldn't be released, such as if they're severely intoxicated, may have been before the magistrate numerous times before on similar offenses, and so forth. But otherwise, that person must be released on his or her own recognizance. For all other individuals, the magistrate is directed to condition bail on the least restrictive further condition. And those conditions must be reasonably necessary to assure the appearance of that person, to protect the safety of the person arrested, the victims, the witnesses, and other persons in the community, and to protect the safety and maintenance of the evidence which is involved. And among those conditions, and the statute lists a number of those, one would be remaining in the custody of a person designated by the judicial officer who agrees to assume supervision of that person. Could be home incarceration, electronic monitoring. A condition could be that the person maintain or seek employment, or a requirement could be attached to avoid all contact with the alleged victim and potential witnesses. It could require that person to refrain from alcohol or other narcotic drugs or controlled substances. There are a number of other conditions, including the possibility of a cash bond or a secured bond with a surety. The magistrate does, or the judge also has the discretion to attach other conditions that are reasonably necessary to ensure that person appears and to protect the safety of, as I mentioned, of that person or victims or witnesses. The statute also includes a number of considerations for the magistrate or judge to consider when deciding how to fix bail or whether or not to impose various reasonable conditions. We had anecdotal testimony during the various meetings that we had of individuals who were required to post a cash bond that basically exceeded any possible cash penalty or fine that might be attached to that offense. And so this bill basically says in all misdemeanors, any cash bail that's set, and that is discretionary, cannot exceed the maximum fine for the offense. And then again, the magistrate or judge also has the ability to modify those conditions during the course of that person's release. Let me just say that I think this is a component of our effort to reform our criminal justice system. It's not a magic bullet. It does, and I think will have an impact on the regional jail bills that affect all of the counties if it is implemented as we intend. It also addresses another challenge that faces us. You know, we can give the counties more money to pay the regional bill, but that doesn't do anything as far as addressing the overcrowding problem that faces our DMAPs, our Division of Corrections. So this, although not perfect and certainly doesn't go as far as some folks want it to go, it is a good bill. It makes it gives us a step in the right direction. We can always refine it, just like we have our second chance legislation and other legislation as time goes on and we have experience with it. But I think it's a good bill that moves us in the right direction of reform of our pretrial release processes. I urge its support, and I would also urge that you urge your colleagues in the Senate to take this up. We've done something similar the last 2 years, which has not been taken up by the Senate. It will give great relief to our counties, and we also need to urge our Supreme Court to train magistrates in the implementation of this legislation once it's adopted. Mr. Speaker, that is a summary of the bill. I'm available for questions, but I urge its passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? The gentleman, the 32nd, Douglas Fast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As for Rule 49, in that I represent bonding companies that could be impacted by this legislation.
As the gentleman's explained your factual situation, you do represent a client who is affected by the business, but you would be it would be the ruling of the chair that you would be a member of a class of greater than 5 and are directed to vote. Are there other members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? The gentleman, the 17th, Douglas Rohrbach.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the chairman yield for one brief question?
Chairman does yield.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If the magistrate, I don't know, just doesn't feel good about the situation, there's a little problem here. Is there still, I appreciate that there's still some magisterial discretion, shall we say, in this bill?
Yes, the language, except for good cause shown, gives the magistrate some ability to take into account some subjective factors that may be involved. The first test is to look at the crimes that the person is charged with, and if there's not a crime that's accepted out, then the magistrate is required to release on recognizance except for good cause shown, and that is a subjective standard to some extent and gives the magistrate some ability to take into account, for instance, the person's if that person's appeared before the magistrate numerous times on other charges, if there's been issues with a previous release. It does preserve. To answer your question simply, yes, it does give some discretion to the magistrate.
So in other words, a defendant's past criminal record could be looked at the magistrate at the time and used as good cause shown?
If it's relevant to the charge, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr.
Are there any other members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 87 ayes, 10 nays, 3 members absent not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2419.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk. Will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2433, modifying the school calendar to begin not earlier than Labor Day and end prior to Memorial Day.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? Chair hears no objection. The gentleman, the 27th, Delegate Ellington, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What the bill calls for is that for the beginning of the school year 2021 to 2022, that instructional terms for students may begin no earlier than September 1st and end no later than June 7th. Schools operating on a balanced calendar are exempted from this rule. State board may waive the requirements of the section upon request of a county board, and state board rule is required for the waiver process. Record keeping and community outreach are also added to the purposes of 4 remaining non-instructional days. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage of the bill.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are the members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? The gentleman, the 13th, Delegate CADLE.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask the chairman some questions, please.
Mr. Chairman, yield for questions. Chair does.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. You've been here for a while, like me, and I got to thinking about this bill. About 4 years ago, we passed legislation to let the counties set their own schedule because we had counties that had a lot of snow days and they weren't getting enough school days, so we gave them flexibility to do whatever they needed to do to get the 180 days in a calendar year. Am I correct?
That is correct.
All right, and this bill would take their ability away to do that.
It would limit it to some extent.
If they had 30 snow days, in other words, they're going to be confined in that window.
They would be, yes.
And I've heard the teachers are for this, but if the teachers in a county were for this, could they not go to the school board, take a vote or a petition, whatever, and give it to the school board and let the school board handle this?
The school board could make a ruling on that, yes.
Okay. All right. I'd like to address the bill, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, the gentleman is recognized to proceed.
I was going to vote for this, Mr. Speaker, but then I got to thinking about what we did 4 years ago, so I think we should leave the counties to decide what they need to do, because I don't know what Mineral County needs to do, or, Mason County. We need to give them flexibility. So I think it was with good intention this bill was introduced, but we really already have flexibility. Thank you.
The gentleman at 12th, Doug at Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Education Chair yield?
Yes, sir.
Can you explain the waivers that are in this?
If a school board wants to, or county wants to go before September 1st, then they could petition the board, and if the board approves that, then they can do so. So that flexibility is there. Now, whether it gets approved is another story.
Okay, what about, can I petition to go after?
If they want to go after, yes, and the exemption in there is also if they have a balanced calendar, which could be an all-year school or a trimester school, they have different times of vacations, then they can petition that too.
Okay,
That's currently, I believe, in code, and this bill doesn't preclude that.
That was my next question. You currently have waivers available now.
I believe so. Waivers that they could, yeah, that's true.
Okay. Would this affect any of the fall sports?
I don't think it would affect sports. I think that what happens is that the practice time, as far as when they could start practices, may be a set time that's by the Secondary School Athletic Association or Commission.
So currently,
that shouldn't affect that. I mean, they give their start times. If they start school, because a lot of schools before they start in September 1st, and they're going to have their band or they're going to have their athletics come and train before.
Okay. So currently, if the county set their schedule or the calendar how they want to do it, and if we pass this, there's a waiver option to do exactly what you're doing right now.
Yes, there is. Both ways, current code and this bill, you could get a waiver for whichever way you want to start.
Okay. You might not know that okay. Do you know if any waivers ever been denied to the counties?
That I don't know. Let me ask council.
I don't know on calendar.
Council's not aware of that either.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman, the 45th, Doug at Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to speak to the bill, please.
Gentleman, may proceed.
I rise in opposition to the bill. I'm a former Board of Education member, and I think that the current system we have now, where the school boards get to choose their days, works out great. I know in Upshur County, we start the second week in August, so we allow for snow days and hunting and Thanksgiving break. And I really hope everyone votes against this and keeps the way we have it now. Thank you.
The gentleman, the 23rd, Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If the chair would yield.
Yes, Chairman does.
Yes, thank you. And it's a variation of my colleague here asking you in regard to the athletics. Does the altering of the school calendar or specific setting of the school calendar, may be more accurate, does it alter the standardized school calendar for SSAC sports, the NFHS school calendar that is pre-established 3 to 4 years in advance?
Not that I'm aware of. From what my counsel says, that they're not aware of that. It should be that schedule should be set.
I understand the SSAC already has it set,
right.
but if we implement this, will it alter them and change the calendars as far as the sports go?
I don't believe so.
Okay, and along those lines, as far as when calendars are set, am I correct in the assumption that a school board adopts a calendar 1 year at a time?
Currently, I believe that's what they do. I don't think it precludes them from doing that several years in advance, and that was a suggestion by the superintendents, that they may want to change that to like a 2 or 3 year, set their calendars 2 or 3 years ahead of time.
Okay, where is that? Is that 1 year cycle of approval? Is that in legislative rule, or is that in state code, or just exactly where is that?
Yeah, it's not in either, from what we understand.
So they could in advance set a schedule 3 to 5 years in advance. So
doesn't say they couldn't.
For planning purposes, teachers, parents, et cetera, would be able to plan better.
Yeah, I don't think it precludes that. From what I was told, that Kanawha County already does a 3-year planned schedule ahead of time.
Okay.
So that is one that's already doing that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman, the 44th, Doug Hanna.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My colleague from the 12th earlier, I think he had asked the question, has a waiver ever been denied? And I serve on Education Committee, and I know when we had this bill in education, we had questioned the department if a waiver had ever been denied. And to their knowledge and their recollection, a waiver has never been denied. So to really say that we're taking flexibility away from the counties, I really just don't think is fair. I think what we're really doing is giving surety to our teachers, parents, and students that they'll know exactly when school will be every year. If a county or teachers, for instance, I'll just use Greenbrier, if they have a problem for the state fair, if it conflicts, they can always apply for a waiver to the department, and a waiver's never been denied according to the board. So, you know, when I read headlines like the one we had on our desk today that says West Virginia House is trying to limit counties' freedom to set school calendars, and the NRA is concerned about deer season, I really think that's an unfair headline as far as how flexibility goes. And also, I want to think about, you know, when we're trying to give surety to our students, when we're trying to affect change in education in West Virginia, and this is not a shot at the NRA because I believe deer season is important, but when it comes down to it, what's more important, deer season or the education of our students? But Mr. Speaker, I'm going to stand up today and I'm going to speak in favor of this bill, and I would urge the rest of the body to vote for this bill as well.
The gentleman, the 27th, Doug Schott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to my friend from the 45th who's serving on a school board, you have my sympathies. I survived a lengthy sentence on a school board, and I'm here today as a result of that survival. One of the things that we struggled with on a school board on a regular basis was this one-size-fits-all that's prescribed either by the state board or by this legislature. There are 55 counties in this state that have different environments, different populations, and we started down, I know a few years ago, we started down a route to try to free up county boards from this micromanagement that emanates here in Charleston from either us or the state board, and give them the freedom to do what they needed to do to educate their children. In Mercer County now, our current school board, and it has been this way since they had the flexibility to do that, actually puts out 3 alternative calendars to the staff and gives them a right to vote on those calendars. And so there is a good bit of flexibility within the district itself as to the calendar that's chosen. But we, like many counties, have a very different environment in the southern part of the state. We're in the mountains. We have a lot of snow. Some years we have 15, 20 snow days, and some years we have none. The idea that we have to apply to the state board through some bureaucratic process, whether it's forms in triplicate or what, to basically do what we're doing now, I think is burdensome and not necessary. Certainly, any county now can pick the calendar that's in this bill if they wish it, if they think it's more convenient. I just think we're going the wrong direction, folks. We've done a U-turn on our efforts to try to give school boards flexibility when we tell them what the school calendar is. So I'm strongly opposed to this, and I'd urge you to vote against it.
The gentleman, the 28th, Doug Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Chair of Education yield for question?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does the state board have any input on calendars that are prescribed by the counties? Or is it complete? Are the counties completely at their own discretion to form their particular calendars?
They give parameters as far as where the calendar has to be. It's within 48 weeks, and they have to have the 200 days for the contract, and they have to put in the 180 days. And it does give them allowances for makeup days, but they have to work within that time frame.
Okay, so I've heard the question asked, and a variety of folks have spoken to this. We, as the legislature, not me per se, but this legislature gave counties the right to form their own schedules in an attempt to allow them flexibility some years back.
Correct.
So through rule, can the state board dictate to the counties a start date, a firm start date or a firm finish date?
Based on this bill, it would be the start date of September 1st.
I mean, currently, under the current law.
Currently, they could start anywhere. They have to do within the 48 weeks.
Okay. So the state board can't say you cannot start before September 1st. Currently.
Right. Not at this time, no.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman, the 58th, Dr. Coles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On our desk is this chart. I'm not sure where it came from. It has some initials on there, but I can't quite read it. But it begs a question or two. But this chart shows when given local control and flexibility, the county school systems have set their calendar. And it appears to me that 54 of the 55 would select something different than what's prescribed by the proposal before you. I've heard the question, has a waiver ever been denied? And I think that's probably not the proper question. Rather, I think, will 54 of the 55 counties that obviously have chosen to exercise their local control and flexibility differently, will they apply for a waiver? 54 of 55 counties apply for a waiver? Or will they surrender their local control to the one-size-fits-all central control proposed by this bill? I think the answer is probably obvious. The current system, the other question that I would have, or I think this chart proposes, is who's empowered under the current system? And it seems to me that it's local communities, local schools, their parents, their staff. They are empowered to make local decisions under the current proposal. And under the new proposal before you, the question would be, who is empowered under that proposal? I think it's probably the state board, the State Department of Education, the state school board members, not your local communities. So I think those are the proper questions to ask, Mr. Speaker, and in both of them, I certainly come down in opposition to this new proposal and would suggest that we vote it down. Thank you.
The gentleman, the 67th, Dr. Doyle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was not going to speak on this, but I think I should, simply because I have done a 180 on it. Last year, I was opposed to it, not only voted against it, I spoke against it in committee. But an interesting thing happened. A whole lot of parents and teachers and retired teachers and a couple of former school board people all came to me and said, John, this was a great idea a few years ago to give the board some flexibility. The problem is they got too much. And you've got some school districts that are starting way, way early in August. So I think this bill, as it is currently constituted, is not the either-or choice, in my view, that some of the opponents have tried to portray it. This does not go back to the hard and fast, start on September 1, end on May 30th that we had before. It is it has some flexibility still in it, and I think enough with the two different provisions. One is that it ends on the 7th of June, and the other providing for requests to start earlier or end later. I think we have in this bill something that conforms to the Goldilocks rule. It's just right. Let's vote for it.
The gentleman, the 35th, Dr. Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the chair mind yielding? You haven't stood up in a while, so anyway.
Yes, sir.
You know, as this has been mentioned by others already, obviously we're trying to set dates for all 55 counties, and there is the waiver
that each county could have if they want to be outside that. Conversely, maybe the gentleman that spoke from the Eastern Panhandle, a school right now could set, according to a waiver, these same dates, could they not?
They can, yes.
And with these set times that are in place, according to this bill, would you agree that it then becomes quite difficult as it relates to additional time off, whether it be for hunting, whether it be for spring break, whether it be extended time during the Christmas holiday, Thanksgiving, etc.?
It does make it a little more stringent.
And then you put snow days on top of that, which, given our different geographies, some counties have a greater problem with that. Would you agree?
I would agree.
Okay, thank you. I'll speak to the bill if I may.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you. You know, with most pieces of legislation, I've always sought out, and will always do that, comments from constituents. And in this particular case, reached out to first our school personnel, principals, our superintendent, teachers. I reached out to neighbors, parents, even some kids. And we have a couple of kids that have been here helping us as interns. Without a doubt, every single one of them is against having a set date. I didn't have one that was in favor of this. You know, it's very problematic having a tight schedule with anything, given the different geography that has been mentioned in some of our counties. This body, over the last couple of years, has continued to make an effort to push local control. Local control. And locally, we all our counties vote on Board of Educations. And so if a county doesn't like what a board is doing, that county can make that choice locally, instead of having us here in Charleston dictate other counties and what they should do. One size does not fit all, as has been mentioned. Mr. Speaker, I plan to vote no, and I urge my other colleagues to do as well. Thank you.
The gentleman is 66, Douglas Espinoza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we contemplate rolling back some of the freedom and flexibility that, as some of my other colleagues have pointed out, we've just provided our local school districts over just a few years ago, I thought it would be helpful to respond to the point that our colleague from the 13th pointed out of exactly how this freedom that our local school districts currently possess, how that came to be. And briefly, I'll point back to the 2012 Education Efficiency Audit. I suspect everyone here is familiar with that or recalls that. That audit was initiated under then Governor Joe Manchin, and then was actually carried out under Governor Earl Ray Tumblin. And it was a result of one of the background and findings of that audit that indicated that it was important for districts to have flexibility in changing the calendar to ensure students do in fact have 100 days of instruction. And as one of my other colleagues pointed out, a number of school districts were having great difficulty, particularly when they had inclement weather, to get those 188 days in. And so that was one of the findings of the audit. Often I hear folks saying, well, whatever happened to the audit? Well, this is one of the items in audit among a number that have actually been implemented. And so this legislation would certainly roll that back. So pursuant to the audit, then Governor Tumblin put forth his omnibus bill. Back then, omnibus wasn't a bad word. And Senate Bill 359, among the provisions or the purposes of Senate Bill 359 was providing for local control of the school calendar. And I certainly was happy to support that legislation. And in fact, every member in this body that was in the legislature at that time, save one, 28 in all, actually supported Senate Bill 359. It passed by a vote of 95-2, which again provided the flexibility that we're discussing today. As my colleague from the 58th pointed out, it's not as if we've provided this flexibility and very few school districts have done anything with it. Literally everyone save one, their calendars that they've established would fall outside of what is prescribed this law, lest they go hat in hand to the state school board and ask for a waiver. I'll point out that one of our former members who now serves as our state school board member was among those who actually supported the flexibility through 359. He, along with another former member of this body who serves on the board, seem to be championing this reduction in flexibility and freedom that our local school districts have. So how they would act on waivers, I think, remains to be seen. But again, if you look at the 54 calendars that have been created by each of our local school districts out there, essentially what we're saying with an affirmative vote of this legislation is that school districts, you can take your calendars and like my colleague from the 35th, certainly you know how I stand on this legislation, but I thought it was important to reach out to my local superintendent. And on your desk, you'll find a copy of a letter from our superintendent in Jefferson County, Bondi Shea Gibson. And I won't read the whole thing to you, but I will highlight a few points, which I think kind of reiterates some of the, what's been discussed here this morning. Number one, Dr. Gibson points out that when surveyed, our parents and staff in Jefferson County overwhelmingly over multiple years of surveys cite the completion of first semester prior to holiday, the Christmas break, as their primary concern. Students completing lengthy college applications and stressors of preparing for significant exams during a holiday season, often filled with travel events, is not in the best interest of children or their families. A start date after Labor Day would require the extension of first semester beyond the holidays. And I'll remind you that if you look at that chart that our colleague from the 58th referenced, you look at the number of school districts who, through the freedom that they have now, have established a calendar where they can, in fact, complete their first semester by the December break. 32 of our school districts have done just that. This legislation would make it very difficult. By adding just a few extra days at the end of June is not going to help districts achieve that goal in the first semester. A few of the other points that Dr. Gibson made: many school systems are forced to close for the entire week of Thanksgiving due to the advent of hunting season. School systems frequently have insufficient bus drivers and other staff available due to the number of sportsmen and sportswomen in our communities. This is a time-honored and valued tradition in many West Virginia families. The late start would be a barrier to many school systems in meeting this need. Now, I know some have discounted, well, this is just a recreational activity, what's the big deal? Well, also, I was reminded by some young folks who take advantage of the hunting season in order to hunt for food shelters. Some of them expressed concern to me that, if they do run into snow in their school districts through a restricted calendar, their hunting opportunities are probably going to be limited. They're concerned that that would limit their ability to support their local food pantries. So I think it goes well beyond just a recreational activity. Under number 3, a point that she makes is in reference to the instructional time. She says to further tell all localities a specific schedule on which to deliver those minutes, and she's referring to the current requirements, is an example of unnecessarily removing local control. Removal of local control for no identified instructional purpose runs counter to the publicly stated goals of the legislature and is not in our family's best interest. She goes on to talk about the appeal system that's been referenced here, and she notes that this alone supports the contention that a different configuration of start and end dates is an acceptable outcome. So her point there is that if the legislation contemplates an appeal, that acknowledges that there are other acceptable calendars. And again, Dr. Gibson argues that we should continue the current flexibility. And then finally, she notices that Most crucially, any school system in the state of West Virginia can choose to follow the schedule currently being proposed as mandatory. There is no restriction impeding any community to freely choose this schedule. It is important to note that currently more than 30 West Virginia communities chose calendars which meet their local needs, and that those choices would be forbidden under this legislation, of course, without the appeal. She closes by saying, we appreciate the difficulty that is inherent in serving a diverse population across the state with so many competing needs and interests. We would suggest that your ability to meet the greatest number of those needs rests in your ability to do so with the fewest possible restrictions. I would convey to your fellow leadership that as the citizens of West Virginia have entrusted you through their votes to represent their best interest, we would ask that you, the legislature, trust and respect the board that they chose through their votes to represent them locally. I'd also point out that to my recollection, I don't believe we heard any district testimony in House Education. I'm looking at our distinguished chair. I don't believe we heard any whatsoever. To my recollection, we did not discuss what would be a major departure from current freedom and practice in legislative interims. So again, I think we're really missing out on a lot of input that we should have had before undertaking this legislation. Also on your desk is an article, Ryan Quinn's article from yesterday. And here's the first part of the headline of that article. West Virginia House is trying to limit counties' freedom to set school calendars. What happened to our freedom agenda here, folks? What happened to our freedom agenda? We want a seminal piece of legislation, one of the seminal pieces of legislation that we're going to enact this session to be West Virginia House is trying to limit counties' freedom to set school calendars. Well, if you want to vote for that, you're going to do it without mine. I received an email from a faculty senate president that pretty much echoed that same point. And frankly, this one hits a little hard. Additionally, I thought the Republican Party believed in more local control. HB 2433 goes against that principle. Besides, if parents and teachers want to change the school calendar in their own county, they can lobby their own local school board. Mr. Speaker, a couple years ago at the urging or suggestion of my Senate counterpart when I served as House Education Chair, I enrolled as a substitute teacher, and I think at best of my recollection, I think I taught at about 18 different schools. And as I would go in many of those schools, I'd often see a banner that would say, "Students first." Well, I think arguably this legislation does anything but put our students first. And if we're serious about doing what's best for our students, then I'd suggest that we need to maintain the freedom and flexibility that the legislature granted our local school boards just a few short years ago. I'd urge rejection of this legislation.
The gentleman the first, Doug McGeehan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, I join my colleagues in opposition to this bill based on some of their points about central mandates and central planning. So in the near future, I've taken notes on my colleagues' logical stances to this bill, and I just hope they can apply that logic into other spheres of legislation. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman the 39th, I got Bartlett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the chairman yield, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In our committee, we spent a lot of time on this, as is evidenced by the discussion today. Did we hear, or were we presented with any evidence that suggested that ending the semester before Christmas had any effect whatsoever on an academic success?
In the committee, it was reported they didn't have any, but they were going to get data, and I did get data that suggested that for the counties that ended before Christmas and the ones that ended after, the data was consistent to get that there was no difference.
No separation between
no
the two.
difference in,
Thank you, sir.
in performance.
In performance. Thank you, sir. Mr. Speaker, I wish to speak to the bill.
Gentleman's recognized.
In my short tenure as a legislator, I've asked my constituents about this issue more than any other. I've asked parents of dozens of school students about this issue. And it is specifically the non-response to county school boards by county school boards that has prompted enthusiastic support from every parent that I talk to about this. I'd like to clarify that this is not a fixed date bill. That phrase has been used many times. It is a bracket of dates that is at least 200 days long in which they need to get their 180 days. And the real pressure that will come on school boards is to take those teacher-only days when the kids don't show up, but the staff does, and the parents have to provide child care in the middle of the week, provide meals in the middle of the week, when otherwise the kids would be in school. Take those teacher-only days and move those out of the bracket. Make those teacher-only days before and after the 180 instructional days. The flexibility is not eliminated, and everyone that has the bill and looked at it knows that. It does reduce the flexibility, and the pressure will come to get those teacher-only days out of the calendar. That's what is responsive to our parents and responsive to our students. I rise to speak in favor of the bill and remove this hardship that falls upon many parents, and I support the legislation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman, the 19th, Dr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to speak on behalf of this bill. We passed it, I believe, out of education last year, and it got hung up somewhere in the process. But I've had literally unanimous support from the people in my district. Not a single negative response to this bill. Not a single one. Literally hundreds of responses, social media, emails from people in my district in favor of this. And I might add that it passed almost unanimously out of the House Education Committee, which is comprised of a lot of school personnel, teachers, service personnel, administrators, the people who arguably would know the most about this situation. They were in favor of it. Additionally, I've heard the argument that it will interfere with hunting season. Well, I couldn't tell you how many people have talked to me, said, oh, back in my day, we went to school from Labor Day to Memorial Day. I'd be willing to bet that most of those people hunted also. It didn't interfere with their hunting back then, so why would it interfere with their hunting now? Plus, kids can get so many excused absences anyway, so if they want to use those to go hunting, what's the problem? Additionally, a local teacher who I work with has already created a calendar. Yesterday, he typically works on the calendars for our school and for our county. Yesterday, he put together a calendar within the boundaries of this bill. It has all the breaks, spring break, Thanksgiving break, Christmas break, no problems. Already made, ready to go. So I would argue that if we're really thinking about the kids, especially in some of our more rural areas that may not have all the economic benefit and the high-tech schools with working air conditioning, which does not always take place in our state, unfortunately. When you send kids back to school the first week of August and it's 95 degrees outside, trust me, it's not comfortable. When you're in a classroom, and believe me, I've been there, when you're in a classroom and it's 85 degrees inside the classroom, it's hard to get kids to pay attention, much less learn anything. So this is not going to fix those problems, but I urge support. It will hopefully make a little bit of a positive impact. So please vote in favor of this bill.
The gentleman, the 26th, Doug Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to rise in support of the calendar bill. As you all probably participated in when they had the listening tours at the high schools, I was encouraged to, not stay with one group, but to go around and listen to what everyone said in those groups. One of the biggest enthusiastically endorsed things was the fact that the calendar, the kids came to school too early. I've worn a lot of hats in education. I taught for 35 years. I did several things, but one of the hats that I wore was that of an athletic director. And when school starts, you know, really early, you have some issues. The SSAC, I think it was mentioned earlier, would the calendar of the SSAC be affected? SSAC allows for high school practices to begin the first Monday in August. If you're going to school on the 5th of August, then you get maybe 2, possibly 3 days of summer practice, while the county next door to you may get 2 weeks of summer ball. Think about the safety aspect of that. You know, you're acclimatizing a young athlete to the heat. Think about the heat we had this fall. Down our way, we had many, many days of 90-plus degrees. We need time for our kids to be acclimatized. For those of you which may not understand that, it's the process by which their bodies get used to heat and how they sweat. And they sweat water versus water and salt, and other problems that lead to cramping and other injuries. So I've talked to numerous people, and I'm looking at an email now. Why are we even debating this? Please vote yes. Many of my fellow teachers, the students that I've spoken with, the parents, they think that it's an amazing opportunity to have a later start date. Vacations are being cut short in many cases. Some of the other things that I've mentioned here, but the listening tour is what got me. When they said enthusiastically, and there were people from many counties at the one that I went to. It wasn't just one county. You all know what I'm talking about if you went to them. They said simply, visit the other groups and listen. And this was the one thing that came up no matter what the group was. So, Mr. Speaker, I enthusiastically support this bill.
The gentleman to the 59th, Dr. Kump.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Great googly moogly. Here we go again. We already have a problem in West Virginia with a top-heavy, too bureaucratic school system. So we want to increase that bureaucracy. To the best of my understanding and memory, all 55 counties have school boards that are elected on a nonpartisan basis. Those folks who don't like what the school board is doing should stand up and speak out and vote their minds on whoever represents them on the school board. I adamantly oppose this bill.
Are there members who have not yet spoken to the bill who wish to be recognized before the chair recognizes those who have been recognized a second time? If not, the gentleman, the 45th, Douglas Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I could speak to the bill again?
Yes.
Thank you. I would just like to point out, I know I've heard some of my colleagues mention that they've had people say that their constituents say that they like this new bill change. And I remember being on the Board of Education, and we would have public hearings on our calendar. Nobody would show up. Nobody would come and say, hey, we want our calendar different than what you're suggesting. So I just think it's funny that they're now writing and saying, yeah, let's change the school calendar, but we put that up for the public and no one ever complained. Thank you.
Are there other members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, the gentleman, the 10th, Douglas Kelly, is recognized to close debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members of this body, for a very spirited discussion. We've talked today about flexibility. This bill doesn't take flexibility away from your local boards of education. It still provides a waiver for those boards to change the calendar if they so need to do so to make up any of the lost days that they haven't been able to make up. But we have to keep in mind that several of the local boards of education have somewhat abused that flexibility that they were given a few years ago. When we talk about boards of education and we talk about parents going before boards and talking about and giving input, we've seen local boards of education absolutely ignore the input that's been given to them, both on the establishment of a calendar
as well as consideration for consolidation or closing of schools. That input has been overlooked or excused. What are the benefits of the bill? Well, this bill provides a more uniform school year statewide. It provides teachers more time to attend courses and classes that would advance their degrees for teaching and provide a better learning tool. It provides more opportunities for those teachers and parents to plan summer activities. It provides teachers an opportunity to take a summer part-time job to supplement their job. It gives students a summer opportunity to hold a summer part-time job, which is also a great learning opportunity for those students. More importantly, it would reduce the need for families to take vacations after the start of the school year and thus would reduce absenteeism. And absenteeism is one of the very reasons that we see lower test scores within our state and from our students. So by reducing those absenteeisms, we most likely would see an increase in our public school test scores. Who supports the bill? Parents support the bill. I haven't talked to a parent in my district that doesn't want this bill passed. Teachers want this bill passed. I haven't talked to a teacher in my district that doesn't want this bill passed. Students are all for this bill. They want this bill. They want it passed. Members of the State Board of Education are supportive of this bill. They want it passed. Members working in the Department of Education want this bill passed. And our state tourism people want this bill passed. Ladies and gentlemen, one other aspect that I hadn't written down that I picked up during discussion has to do with students starting school in August. They're going to school in school buildings that don't have proper ventilation, proper air conditioning. They're going the hottest day, the hottest month of the entire season. And this bill would eliminate that as well. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 47 ayes, 50 nays, 3 members absent not voting. Less than a majority in favor, the chair declares the bill rejected. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2877, relating to charging a fee for parking in an accessible parking space bearing the international symbol of access.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? Chair hears no objection. The gentleman from the 46th, Douglas Martin, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Bill. The bill amends the code section pertaining to parking privileges for persons with a mobility impairment to provide that no public entity shall install or maintain a parking meter in an accessible parking space bearing the international symbol of access. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are the members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? The gentleman from the 28th, Douglas Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentleman yield.
Gentleman does yield.
You're the lead sponsor of this bill, is that correct?
Yes.
Could you provide a little insight as to the genesis of this bill?
Yeah, I got the idea from a bill that a good friend of mine in high school was actually paralyzed from the waist down. And just being with him on how expensive it is to have all the things that he needs in order to have his wheelchair and things, and also how difficult it is actually to park or to feed the meter, how difficult it might be for some to feed that meter, that I just thought that this bill would be a little bit of a relief to those folks that need it the most.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Are there other members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? Does the gentleman wish to close debate on the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 96 ayes, 1 nay, 3 members absent not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2877.
Are there amendments to the title?
Delegate Schott moves to amend the title.
The question before the House is the adoption of the title amendment. Those in favor of the title amendment will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares the title amendment adopted. The title as amended by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 4030, increasing limit for application for original appointment as a firefighter to 40 years of age for honorably discharged veterans.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears no objection. The gentleman, the 22nd, Delegate Jeffries, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to increase the age limit for an application for original appointment as firefighter to 40 years of age for honorably discharged veterans of any branch of U.S. Armed Forces or National Guard. That's the bill, Mr. Speaker. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? The gentleman, the 60th, Delegate Wilson, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I may, I'd like to give just a little bit of context. Your average enlistee is 18 when he enlists. If he does 20 years and then retires, he's 38. Currently, the limit on this bill, on this section of code, is 35. So if we bump it up to 40, that allows your average person to enlist, do 20 years, and then become a fireman. Thank you, sir.
Do other members wish to speak to the passage of the bill? Does the gentleman wish to close debate on the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 97 ayes, 0 nays, and 3 members absent not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 4030.
Are there amendments to the title?
Delegate Maynard moves to amend the title.
The question before the House is the adoption of the title amendment. Those in favor of the title amendment will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. The chair declares the title amendment adopted. The title as amended by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I move this bill take effect from passage.
The lady from the 49th moves that House Bill 4030 be made effective from passage. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. The clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 97 ayes, 0 nays, 3 members absent not voting, 2/3 of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4094, continuing the foster care ombudsman.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears none. The gentleman from the 41st, Delegate Hill, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last year, the legislature passed HB 2010, which created the Office of the Ombudsman. On October 29th, DHHR appointed the state's first foster care ombudsman. This bill was recommended for passage by the Joint Committee on Health, which performed an extensive study of the foster care process during the 2019 interims. About 22 states have some form of children's ombudsman. Jurisdiction, size, and operation of children's ombudsman offices vary by state. The purpose of this bill is to expressly state the duties and investigative responsibilities of the foster care ombudsman. The ombudsman shall perform the following: establish a statewide procedure to receive, investigate, and resolve complaints filed on behalf of a foster child, foster parent, kinship placement, provide input into the creation of the foster care or foster children and foster parents Bill of Rights, advise the public of the services of the foster care ombudsman, and obtain assistance from other state governmental agencies as required. This bill permits access to foster care children and their records, including giving the ombudsman the ability to obtain a subpoena to assist in investigation of complaints and fulfillment of the foster care ombudsman duties. On an annual basis, the Ombudsman will summarize citizen complaints and identify system trends in an annual report. This bill requires that certain information remain confidential by foster care ombudsman, and the foster care ombudsman is immune from liability when acting in her official capacity. Finally, this bill also creates misdemeanor offenses for willful interference with the foster care ombudsman program investigation. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? The gentleman the first, Douglas McGee, is recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Rule 49, I'm employed as a counselor in an alternative school, which is categorized as a residential care provider.
Yes, as the gentleman has explained the facts to the chair, the gentleman would be a member of a class of greater than 5 and therefore would be directed to vote. Do other members wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 97 ayes, 0 nays, 3 members absent not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4094.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk. Will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Are there further bills on third reading? If not, bills on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4026, exempting businesses transporting scrap tires, waste tires, or other used tires from certain statutory provisions.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4353, creating a rational nexus requirement between prior criminal conduct and initial licensure decision-making.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4476, providing for the timely and efficient collection, submission, testing, retention, and disposition of forensic evidence in sexual assault cases.
Are there amendments?
Delegate S. Brown moves to amend the bill on page 4, section 2, line 39, following the period by inserting the following. I, the Commission shall by December 1st, 2020, develop a strategic plan to, 1, establish the order of priority for testing kits, 2, test all of the previous kits that can be tested, and 3, establishing a tracking system for use of victims for all kits tested after December 1, 2020 that will allow them to know the status of their test kits. The Commission shall submit to the superintendent any additional needed statewide protocols for testing future sexual assault evidence collection kits and recommended agency rules and guidelines for the state police system as provided in this subsection. The Commission shall also submit its report to the Legislature's Joint Committee on Government and Finance.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment as just read by the clerk. The lady for 65th, Douglas Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to kind of clarify what the amendment would do, this was in order to speak to some of the content of the bill and then amplify what it would do for victims' rights and the voice of the survivor. It directs the Sexual Assault Examination Commission that is cited in the bill to, by December 1st, 2020, to develop a strategic plan. And there are 4 concise points to that plan. 1 is to establish priorities for which the kits are to be tested. 2, to get the backlogs of untested kits eliminated. 3, create a system to allow victims to know the status of their kits prospectively. And then 4, sets the deadline of development. This language in particular, for the benefit of the body, is truly to lift up the fact that victims were not being notified, survivors were not being notified of the ramifications of this testing. And with a backlog, there were no results that would come to pass. So what we're doing here is lifting up the bill, making sure that we're closing the gaps for victims and survivors and ensuring that they have their voice at the table when it comes to seeking justice. This was done in collaboration with domestic violence advocacy, with many stakeholders that had put forth the original bill, and then, of course, with the chairman of Judiciary. So, Mr. Speaker, I urge its passage.
The gentleman, the 27th, Douglas Schott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the gentlelady indicated, this bill was worked in the Judiciary Committee. It passed overwhelmingly. Since the amendment was initially submitted and then later reformed. We've discussed this with the interested parties. That would include DMAPS, State Police, Council. All of them are agreeable that this does no harm to the bill and is acceptable to those of us who are sponsoring of the bill, and therefore we have no objection to the gentlelady's amendment.
Do other members wish to speak to the adoption of the amendment? If not, the question is on adoption of the amendment. Those in favor of the amendment will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Next bill on second reading.
House Bill 4496, removing the specific mandate of the Board of Risk and Insurance Management to purchase liability insurance for the Division of Corrections.
Are there amendments?
Delegate Schott moves to amend the bill on page 1, section 5A, line 13 by striking out the words "or correctional institution."
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment as just read by the clerk. The gentleman, the 27th, Delegate Schott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is indeed just a technical correction. Throughout the bill, the terms "or correctional institutions" were removed except in one place, and that's what this amendment seeks to do, is to make it consistent with the rest of the bill. That's all it does. I urge adoption.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. Those in favor of the amendment will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Next bill on second reading.
House Bill 4501, relating to the ability to refuse offenders for a commitment to a jail.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4510, prohibiting bodily intrusion by an inmate upon any person at any correctional facility.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced. Are there further bills on second reading? If not, bills on first reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2338, allowing the owner of an antique military vehicle to display alternative registration insignia.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4179, recognition of emergency medical services personnel licensure interstate compact.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4359, increasing the filing fees for insurers.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4381, relating to lifetime hunting, fishing, and trapping licenses for adopted children.
The bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4470, relating to persons 18 years of age or older in the custody of the Bureau of Juvenile Services.
The bill will be advanced. Are there further bills on first reading? If not, leaves of absence. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For our colleagues, Delegate Cooper, Mant, and Hornbuckle.
Are there objections to leaves being granted? Chair hears no objections. Leaves shall be granted. Remarks by members. Remarks by members. Introduction of guests. Lady from the 32nd, Delegate Kessinger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am very honored today to have two very special guests in the gallery today. I have my cousin Hannah and her dad Chris. Hannah came in second place in the State Social Studies Fair last year when she did her project on how a bill becomes a law. She interviewed our counsel Kip, and she's here to visit with us today to see her project in action. If everybody would make her welcome.
Are there additional introductions? If not, miscellaneous business. If none, the lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move subject to announcements that the House adjourn until 11 a.m. Thursday.
The question before the House is the lady's motion that subject to announcements, the House stand adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow. Are there announcements? Lady from the 49th, Delegate Summers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Rules Committee will meet at 10:45 tomorrow behind the chamber.
The gentleman from the 10th, Delegate Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Finance will meet this evening at 5 p.m. for a budget presentation by the Arts, Culture, and History Department. Your committee will meet following the budget presentation to take up legislation. The agenda is posted. The Republicans of the committee will caucus prior to this evening's budget presentation in Delegate Hill's office at 4:30. Mr. Speaker, your committee will also meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for a budget presentation from the Department of Human Resources. Be aware that Budget Finance Committee hearings and committee meetings will be held in the East Wing Committee Room for today and tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 35th, Delegate Capito.
Yes, sir, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much. The Committee on the Judiciary will meet this evening at 5 p.m. in the committee room. The agenda for that meeting will be posted, and in addition, we will meet again tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in the committee room, and the agenda for that meeting will be posted. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 13th, Delegate Higginbotham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Education will be meeting tomorrow,
Thursday, January 30th at 5 p.m. in the Education Committee room, and the agenda will be posted.
The gentleman the 13th, KADLE.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tonight's the night that we're going to go to the State Police Academy, 6:30. Be down there at the Academy. It's at 135 Academy Drive, Dunbar. And for those of you who can't make it and would like to go, I'd like to do another one like Friday after session. We'll announce a time later, I guess. But thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman the 10th, Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Energy will meet tomorrow in the Judiciary Conference Room, Committee Room at 3 p.m. The agenda will be posted.
The gentleman the 48th, Queen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Reminder that your Committee on Small Business, Entrepreneurship, and Economic Development will meet today at 1 p.m. in the House Government Organization Committee Room. The agenda has been posted.
The gentleman the 17th, Rohrbach.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Senior, Children's, and Family Issues will meet today at 3 p.m. in the Government Organization Room.
The gentleman the 50th, CAPITO.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have two announcements. Our friends from the West Virginia AFL-CIO are gathered in the Cultural Center immediately upon adjournment, providing lunch for all of us. There will not be a labor caucus today, but they've asked us to join them in the Cultural Center. Lunch is being provided. And just a reminder to the membership also, Mr. Speaker, the AFL-CIO reception is this evening at the 4 Point Sheraton. All are welcome. Thank you.
The gentleman the 58th, Coles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Political Subdivisions will meet tomorrow at 1 p.m. in the Judiciary Committee room. The agenda will be posted.
The lady in the 32nd, Kessinger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on the Prevention and Treatment of Substance Abuse will meet tomorrow at 1 p.m. in the Government Organization Committee room.
The gentleman the 35th, Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a reminder, at 10:15 tomorrow here in the chamber, the University of Charleston's championship soccer team will be recognized. Would love to have everybody here. Thank you.
Are there further announcements? If not, the question before the House is a motion that the House stand adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. The chair declares the motion adopted. The House is adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow.
Senate will please come to order. The Senate will please come to order. All those not having privileges of the floor will please vacate the chamber. And with those on the floor and our guests in the gallery, please rise as we are led in prayer this morning by Pastor Ladina Teets of Brooksfield Church in Aurora, West Virginia. And then please remain standing as we are led in the pledge this morning by the Senator from Preston County, Pastor Teets.
Let us quiet our hearts and mind and go before the Lord in prayer. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for this legislature and all the work that they are doing for this great state of West Virginia. We also know that behind every great legislature, there's a group of people, the staff, working diligently to make them keep this ball rolling. Heavenly Father, we thank you for each of them. Just now, we want to ask you to guide us and direct us and lead us in your will, Heavenly Father. Thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ, in whom we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. The Senator from Preston County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the members on the floor and the guests in the gallery please join me in pledging to the allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag.
Thank you. You may be seated. The reading of the journal.
West Virginia Legislature Senate Journal, January 28, 2020. The Senate met at 11:10 a.m. Senator Carmichael, Mr. President, in the chair.
The Senator from Harrison County requests unanimous consent that further reading of the journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read. Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Introduction of guests. On behalf of the Senate, it is my pleasure to welcome our honorary pages for the day. Please stand and be recognized when your name is called. As guest of the Senator from Wyoming, we have Ashton Huff, Jacob Hatfield, and Carissa Colgrove. As guest of the senator from Preston, we have William Estep. As guest of the senator from Raleigh, Kylie Stone. As guest of the senator from Greenbrier, Grace McClure and Thomas Seibold. And as guest of the junior senator from the 17th, Jesse Riley. They're all standing in the front. If the Senate would give them a warm welcome. Thank you. You may be seated. Further introductions, the junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the Senate, it's my pleasure to welcome the physician of the day today. If you wouldn't mind standing, Dr. Malhive, let the Senate give you a warm welcome. Thank you.
Further introductions, the senator from Preston County.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the senator from Tucker and myself, we're pleased to have with us today the chaperone of our page, Chrissy Estep. She is in the President's Gallery. Please stand up, and the Senator, please give her a warm welcome.
Further introductions, the senator from Ohio County.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have many members from the AFL-CIO with us today in all of the galleries, and so I would ask that they stand up and be recognized.
The senator from Mercer County.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of my senior senator from the 6th, and I'd like to introduce my friend from Mercer County, Ann Pauley, who's with AARP. If she would please stand in the Senate and make her welcome.
The senator from Greenbrier County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just want to introduce the parents of our pages that are here today. First, Grace's dad, Dennis McClure, is here. And then also with Thomas, Sophia Seibold. And if y'all please stand, Sophia Seibold and Thomas's grandma, Sue Massey, my fellow church member. Will the Senate please make them feel welcome?
The senator from Raleigh County.
Thank you, Mr. President. The father of our page, Kylie Stone, is here. James Stone, if you would stand, and the Senate make him feel welcome.
Senator from Wyoming County.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the junior senator from the 9th, I'd like to present the teacher, Lauren Manning of Carissa Colgrove and Ashton Huff. Also, the dad of Jacob Hatfield, Wendell Hatfield. Please make them welcome.
Further introductions, a senator from Harrison County.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's your honor and mine and that of my senior senator from Braxton County to introduce a good friend of ours from the Shinston area who comes down here with the AARP. And I just want to take a second to say, you know, all the representatives from the AARP are representing our interests because we're going to be all part of the AARP soon. But if my friend Bob Osborne will stand up and be recognized, please make him feel welcome. There he is.
Senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sneaking into the back of the chamber is a former member of this body. I'd ask him to stand, and let's recognize, welcome back, Mike Ross.
The senator from Braxton County.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's your pleasure, as well as the junior senator from Harrison County, to introduce the other half of that team. Here's a guy who has been a great West Virginian and has literally gave millions of dollars back to different causes and charities and so forth. And someone I'm proud to call my friend Ike Morris. I think he's in the North Gallery. Well, he's here somewhere. But anyway, if the Senate would make him welcome.
The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have the father of one of our pages, Mike Riley. If you wouldn't mind standing, let's give you a warm welcome.
Further introductions? Further introductions. The senator from Tucker County.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of you and my fellow senator from Preston County, we have with us today, have several introductions, but first we got the cadets, some cadets from the Mountaineer Challenge Academy, and everyone here knows what kind of a great program that is. And if you would stand when I call your name, we got William Naylor from Kanawha County, Matthew Lansdowne from Berkeley County, Cameron White from Harrison County, Andrew Fitzgerald from Mineral County, Brian Davella from Monongahela County, Evan Truly from Wood County, Nakia Vaughan from Taylor County. I hope I'm close, dear. Jackie Soraz from Wetzel County, and we have Rebecca Stroke from Wood County. If the members would make these fine men and women, young men and women welcome, I appreciate it.
Senator, have additional introduction?
Yes.
Senator may proceed.
Sorry, it's Preston County Day, so it's also visiting with us today. We have a group from Preston County, my Preston County seniors, Senator Sapol's and I, who are down here. They come down every year for a legislative day, and it just happens to be on Preston County Day this year. But they was able to bring 40 of them with them, and we had the pleasure of having dinner with them last night. And we found out how to solve a lot of the problems in this state, so you'll probably hear from us a good bit here. But there's 40 of them, and if they would stand and the members make them welcome, and they're here for the roads today, so. And Mr. President, a correction, the pastor, Ladina, was from Brookside Church of the Brethren. Her and her husband Mark, I think if he would stand, he's in the gallery here someplace. They have the hard job of being my pastor back home, so they probably pray for me more than all of you's put together. So if you make them welcome, thank you.
Senator from Preston County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me get another swipe at this. I would like to also recognize in the North Gallery the chaperones that came with the Mountaineer Challenge Academy today, Bob Morris and Diana Trick. If they'd stand and be recognized, they do a fantastic job, and they have an outstanding program, and our hats are off to you. Thank you very much.
Further introductions? Further introductions. Communications from the House.
The Clerk of the House announced the passage by that body of committee substitute for House Bill 2497 relating to the whistleblower law.
Message will be received and referred to the Committee on the Judiciary.
House Bill 4089 requiring cursive writing to be taught.
Message be received and referred to the Committee on Education.
House Bill 4365 granting of college credit hours for learning English as a second language.
Message will be received and referred to Committee on Education.
House Bill 4480 relating to legislative rules for the Higher Education Policy Commission.
Message will be received and referred to Committee on Education. Are there further communications from the House?
No, sir.
Communications from the Executive?
There are none.
Reports from standing committees.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration Senate Bill 281, removing residency requirement for persons applying for reappointment to Municipal Police Department, and Senate Bill 552, requiring contracts of $25,000 or more be competitively bid, and reports the same back with recommendation that they each do pass. Respectfully submitted, Mark R. Maynard, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bill 511, regulating pawnbrokers, and reports back committee substitute for same, and Senate Bill 534, removing workers' compensation exclusion for temporary legislative employees, and reports back committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the two committee substitutes do pass. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bill 547 relating to employer testing, notice, termination, and forfeiture of unemployment compensation, and reports back a committee substitute for same with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration Senate Bill 614, changing method of allocating funding from safe school funds, and reports back a committee substitute for same with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but with the further recommendation that it first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Patricia Puertas-Rucker, Chair.
Report will be received. The Senator from Jefferson County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate Bill 614 be referred to the Committee on Finance.
The Senator from Jefferson. Senator from Jefferson County moves that the Senate Bill 614 be referred to the Committee on Finance. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the motion adopted. Further reports.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration Senate Concurrent Resolution 10 requesting study of current West Virginia laws relating to anti-bullying measures in schools, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it be adopted. Respectfully submitted, Patricia Puertas-Rucker, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration engrossed House Bill 4010, changing the licensing requirement for certain casino employees, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Mark R. Maynard, Chair.
Report will be received. Under the original double committee reference, be referred to the Committee on Finance.
That's all I have, sir.
Reports from select committees.
There are none.
Introduction of bills. The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that Senate Bill number 643 through Senate Bill 656 be considered introduced, read by their titles, and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system.
The junior senator from the 17th requests unanimous consent that Senate Bill number 643 through Senate Bill number 656 be considered introduced, read by their titles, and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system. Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Resolutions.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 14 by Senator Romano urging Congress declare Equal Rights Amendment to U.S. Constitution.
I'm looking forward here. Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day.
Senate Resolution 22 by Senators Plymel and Woelfel designating January 30, 2020 as Marshall University Day.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day.
Senate Resolution 23 by Senators Palumbo and Takubo congratulating the University of Charleston men's soccer team.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day. Are there further resolutions?
No, sir.
Motions. Petitions.
I have a petition presented by Senator Trump from Thomas A. Rowe and with numerous signatures relating to the Board of Medicine's guidelines pertaining to the standard of care.
Petition will be received and referred to Committee on Health and Human Resources. Are there further petitions?
No, sir.
Unfinished business.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 13 naming the Ira Noon Copley and Marie Copley Memorial Bridge.
Resolution will be referred to Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure.
Senate Resolution 20 designating January 29th, 2020 as Preston County Day.
The senator from Preston County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, the committee references dispensed with, and the resolution be put upon its adoption.
The senator from Preston County requests unanimous consent that the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and that the resolution be placed upon its adoption. Is there objection? Chair hears none. The clerk will please read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 20 designating January 29th, 2020 as Preston County Day.
Question before the Senate is adoption of resolution. Is there discussion? The senator from Preston County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I seriously considered not running this resolution this year because due to the fact that we didn't get any buckwheat cakes. I remember year after year, as soon as I opened up the door on the west wing, I could smell them all through the Capitol. But nonetheless, we're welcoming you here today despite the lack of food. Mr. President, when was the last time you saw a county day pack the galleries? We have business and community leaders here. We have the Preston County seniors, and we have over 125 students from the Preston County school system. I mean, literally every gallery is packed. It's a fine day for Preston County. And we don't often toot our own horn, but we really have a reason to. I know that tourism has been a hot issue in West Virginia and in Preston County for the past year or so, and it's growing. We have tourism opportunities there that are unique to the entire nation. Arthurdale, which is the nation's first New Deal community, Hovatters Wildlife Zoo, and interestingly enough, the littlest church and mailing office in the, I remember reading the sign, I think it says in 48 states, so I'm not sure about Alaska and Hawaii, but nonetheless, the Cranesville Swamp and Himalayan Salt Spa Cave. There's agritourism opportunities which are growing literally every day. It's been brought up as a grassroots effort. The Allegheny Treenware, the Vested Heirs Farms, Schaefer Heritage Farms, Crimson Shamrock Alpacas, Riffle Bison Farm, and the Dream Mountain Ranch. They also have efforts to provide food, produce to the local school system, and we have a washing center and a production center right in Preston County, which is standing up. I think that we're going to do great things in the near future. We have the home to 2 craft brewers. We have High Ground Brewing and Screech Owl Brewing. Fantastic place to go and have a beer and have a wonderful meal. And interestingly enough, I didn't know this until just today, but Preston County will host the 2020 ICF Wildwater Canoeing World Cup races. That'll be this May. So it's a big deal. So we're reaching out beyond the state's borders and beyond the country's borders. This is an international event, and we're excited to have that. But Mr. President, we're always happy to have West Virginia come down and show off a little bit, and today is no exception. I had a brief conversation with one of the commissioners right before the floor session. Next year, we hope to bring down every 8th grade student in the state, or in the county, I'm sorry. Mr. President, thank you so much for your indulgence, and I urge adoption of this resolution.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion. The senator from Tucker County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also rise in support of the resolution. I look back here and see many friends from years ago, some when I was a kid, so I'm not going to point them out, but Preston County is kind of unique, and I also received a lot of complaints because of the buckwheat cake, so I went to the people in charge, and they assure me if we ever get the dome fixed that they will return with the buckwheat cake. So, Mr. President, I urge us to maybe adopt a resolution or something to speed up the construction on the dome. But I can't say much more than what my co-senator said. Like I said, I see a lot of lifelong friends and people in the gallery, even people that taught me or tried to teach me in school, and you can see the gallery. And Preston County has taken the lead with the road issues. I can assure you that they're the ones that up front of all the counties. All the counties are concerned and working hard, but this group has come together and organized and made their voices heard. And also, I believe Preston County, I know out of all our 8 counties, is leading the charge with broadband expansion. Our EDA director is very active on that, and they are getting broadband expanded through Preston County, so that's a big accomplishment. But this is a very active county. You know, I'm proud of them, and I support this resolution. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further discussion? Not. Question before the Senate is adoption of the resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the resolution adopted. The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate stand in brief recess for the purpose of presenting the resolution.
Junior senator from the 17th moves that the Senate stand in brief recess for the purpose of presenting this resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the Senate in brief recess to present this resolution. Senate will please come to order. The Senate will please come to order. Are there further items under unfinished? Recognize the senator from Brooke County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just requesting unanimous consent that the remarks by the senator from Tucker and the remarks by the senator from Preston regarding Senate Resolution 20 be placed in the appendix of the journal.
Without objection, so ordered. Are there further items under unfinished business?
Yes, sir. Senate Resolution 21, celebrating achievements and contributions of Monongalia County.
The senator from Monongalia County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Unanimous request unanimous consent that the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the resolution be placed upon its adoption.
The senator from Monongalia County requests unanimous consent that the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and that the resolution be placed upon its adoption. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Clerk will please read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 21, celebrating the achievements and contributions of Monongalia County and its citizens to the great state of West Virginia.
Question before the Senate is adoption of the resolution. Is there discussion? The senator from Monongalia County.
Unanimous consent to address the resolution, please.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen at the back of the room, if you'll turn your heads a little bit and focus back here, is a wonderful group of men and women from Monongalia County. And let me stress, it's Monongalia County and not Monongahela. If you say Monongahela, you're referring to a river. But there is a story that goes with that, as many of us know in our town, is that Monongalia was actually recorded incorrectly with the clerk's office. But we've been running with that ever since. Monongalia County is a running town. We're growing all the time. We started as a river town with goods coming from Pittsburgh to Fairmont, and that being a little port city along the way. Later on, railroad came into the community on both sides of the river. And then later on, of course, we know 79 and 68, which brought great growth to the community. But in between, we had some other significant things in regards to WVU setting up there as a land-grant institution, which helped our community grow and flourish into what we see today. But a lot of things have happened along the way that need some recognition, I believe. We have the Cooper's Rocks that we share with Preston County, and it's a wonderful place for tourism. And just recently, it was announced that we'll be getting a new gateway into Cooper's Rocks, which will mirror the former gateway we had back before the interstate was put in, back when we had the work progress programs during the Roosevelt administration. And that's going to really be a feature, I believe, in a lot of tourism publications in West Virginia for many years to come. We're the home of the NYPL champion West Virginia Black Bears baseball team. And many of you helped with that piece of legislation, that TIF district, to bring baseball at that level to Morgantown, and it's also home of the WVU Mountaineers baseball team as well. So we're very excited. But just recently, as part of, I believe it's part of the TIF district as well. Don't correct me if I'm wrong, folks. But we have the new Milan Park Aquatic Center, which it too has brought a unique aspect to the community. Now, we have a lot of things going on. We've been recognized by numerous publications in regards to being a STEM community, lifestyle choice, a place to retire, just wonderful recognition over the years. So it's with great pleasure that I welcome these folks at the back of the room. They're the movers and shakers of Morgantown. I've interacted with each and every one of them on a regular basis, and they know Monongalia County. They know West Virginia. And I thank you, Mr. President. I urge adoption of the resolution.
Is there further discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is adoption of the resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the resolution adopted. The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate stand in brief recess for the purpose of presenting the resolution.
Junior senator from the 17th moves that the Senate stand in brief recess for the purpose of presenting this resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the Senate in brief recess to present this resolution. Senate will please come to order. The Senate will please come to order. Are there further items under unfinished business?
No, sir.
Bills on third reading.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 209 relating to annexation by minor boundary adjustment. Third reading of the bill.
The question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senior senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Of the three methods of annexation in code, annexation by minor boundary adjustment is the only method that does not currently require the direct input of parties in the territory being annexed. The committee substitute for the Senate Bill 209 amends the minor boundary adjustment process to require that all parties in the additional territory provide an affidavit that they consent to the annexation. A party will be deemed to have consented to the annexation if it cannot be located within 90 days after efforts are made to contact it. If an application for a minor boundary adjustment annexation is denied, the bill prohibits a municipality from reapplying for 2 years after the denial. The bill also makes a small technical change to a related section of the code. I urge passage of the bill.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion. If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question there being 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting, more than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The junior senator from 17.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Junior senator from 17th moves that the bill be made effective from passage and requests unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question there being 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting, more than 2/3 of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 241 requiring State Board of Education develop method for student transportation costs as standalone consideration. Third reading of the bill.
The question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Jefferson County.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill, as introduced, creates a whole new section of code that requires the Board of Education to develop a plan and report to the legislature before September 1st, 2020, a funding mechanism to address transportation personnel shortages in rural, low-density population counties. Currently, most of the funding comes from grants, which creates complex funding issues. This bill seeks to address this issue by requiring the Board of Education to develop a plan to fund personnel as an item separate from the total basic state allowance and providing for better consideration of fixed costs of transportation in rural counties. I'm happy to answer any questions. I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question there being 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2696, creating an additional index system for state-owned lands. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senior senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee substitute for House Bill 2696 requires the state auditor to create an additional index system listing property obtained by the state. The purpose of this bill is to begin the process of making it easier for individuals and agencies to locate all property owned by the state, regardless of the name under which it was acquired. I'll entertain questions. Otherwise, I urge passage of the bill.
Is there further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed House Bill 4130 relating to competitive bidding for government construction contracts arising out of declared states of emergency. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senior senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 4130 is an interim bill recommended by the Joint Committee on Flooding concerning contracting for construction projects. The bill allows the state to solicit open-ended bids for projects arising out of a state of emergency without listing the specific addresses of the houses or structures in the solicitation. It also allows a state agency awarding a residential contract to waive a requirement that a payment and performance bond be furnished, provided that if a bond is not required, the contractor must certify that all subcontractors, laborers, and vendors have been paid before final payment is released. I'll entertain questions. Otherwise, I urge passage of the bill.
Is there further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk has a title amendment.
Senator Maynard moved to amend the title of the bill.
Question before the Senate is adoption of title amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the title amendment adopted. Junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage. On question unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Junior senator from the 17th moves that the bill be made effective from passage and requests unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question, there being 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting, more than majority or more than 2/3 of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Are there further bills on third reading?
No, sir.
Bills on second reading?
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 175 requiring certain agencies maintain website which contains specific information. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 261 creating criminal penalties for introducing ransomware into computer with intent to extort. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 339 authorizing DHHR promulgate legislative rules. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Engrossed House Bill 4103 relating to Office of Drug Control Policy.
Junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the bill lie over one day while retaining its place on the calendar.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Are there further bills on second reading?
No, sir.
Bills on first reading. Junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that all bills on first reading be considered read and advanced to second reading.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Introduction of guests. Remarks by members of the Senate. Senator from Ohio County.
Mr. President, I just wanted to take a moment to express concerns that I have about the efforts underway here to repeal the personal property tax on manufacturing machinery, equipment, and inventory. I've done a little bit of research, and I see that a lot of states have some form of inventory or machinery and equipment taxes, but some states who once had those taxes have gotten rid of them. One state that falls into that category is the state of Ohio. Ohio eliminated their business personal property tax, and as a result, according to a peer-reviewed study, they lost thousands of jobs. The numbers are maybe close to 20,000 jobs that were lost as a result of the elimination of that tax. And that might seem counterintuitive, but according to the research that's been done, that in the short term, repealing this kind of tax encourages investment in capital and in automation and not in people. And so the job growth actually went down in that state. And I'm afraid that in the short term, if we were to repeal this tax, we would actually see the same kind of thing happen here in West Virginia. We would actually lose jobs, and we would be incentivizing companies to invest in capital and in automation and not in West Virginians. Here in West Virginia, this personal property tax that we're talking about is relied upon by counties pretty substantially. Some counties get more revenue than others. I'm obviously a little biased towards the northern part of the state, and we do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to the chemical industries, the steel industries, manufacturing industries, and we always have. If the personal property tax on manufacturing machinery, equipment, and inventory would be repealed, my counties would take a huge hit. Based upon numbers from 2018, Hancock County would lose $5.5 million in revenue each year. Marshall County would lose $5.3. Brooke County would lose $6.2 million. Ohio County would also lose money in the process. Counties and cities and schools would all face serious impact if this tax were to be repealed. And not only am I worried about it, but my county commissioners are worried about it. They've contacted me about it. They've spoken about it publicly. My city officials are also concerned about it. They were here at the Capitol the other day expressing their concerns about their inability to pay for public safety, to pay for firefighters, to pay for their share of roads that they're responsible for in their communities. And so they're all worried about how this revenue is going to be replaced, and they've expressed those concerns to me. And although my district is made up of some really tough and really resilient people, and we've been through a lot of tough times, this would be a huge blow to the northern district, the northern part of this state up in the Panhandle. We've had some big blows as of late. We had a hospital close in Wheeling. We had a hospital close right across the river that employed a lot of people from my district. And that was and is still being dealt with, and it was a huge blow to our area. We're facing other attacks on jobs and job providers in our community right now in this legislature. So what I'm concerned about is how we're going to replace that revenue. I looked at the numbers from WVU, from their economic analysis, and in 2022, we have a projected budget deficit of $170 million. In 2023, it's $157 million. 2024, it's $171 million. And in 2025, it's $164 million projected budget deficit. So I just don't see how we're going to replace that revenue. And I'm nervous and concerned for the counties that would be impacted by this. And I also worry about future revenue that we might be sacrificing. I don't know how many of you know, but that plant in Doddridge County, the natural gas processing plant, generates revenue of $2.6 million every year based upon this tax that we're talking about repealing. That would go away if we were to go forward with this. And we've got big plans in Brooke County and Hancock County to develop more in the manufacturing industries. Again, another thing I'm talking to my county commissioners about. And I'd be worried about future revenue that would also be sacrificed if we would go forward with something like this. So I guess in the end, my point, Mr. President, is until I can see how my counties will be made whole, I'm going to have a hard time getting behind something like this. And looking at the numbers, I would expect that my colleagues from Kanawha and CADLE, Wood, Monongalia, Putnam, Jackson, and Berkeley would feel the same way, because they're also going to take a pretty big hit if this were to happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Further remarks? Further remarks. The junior senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think that this amendment that would come through has been mischaracterized as a loss to the counties. I think that what counties should be looking at right now is how many jobs do they do not have, because West Virginia's tax structure is out of step with our competitors. Just a reminder, the net tax on manufacturers in this state is around 15.9%. Ohio's is 5.9%. Pennsylvania, 4.2%. Elimination of this tax essentially reduces the net tax down to about 8%. Still double almost of what Pennsylvania's is. Still significantly higher than Ohio's. And the impact of that tax that we have now is what manufacturing jobs, and when you think manufacturing jobs, everybody thinks robots and automation and all those type things. And you know, that's some of it. But 90% of our manufacturers in West Virginia are small businesses. They have 100 employees or less. And if you go on down the line for those that manufacture, there's quite a few of them that'll get to 5 and 10 employees. Those manufacturers produce products that are behind the 8 ball right off the bat because of West Virginia's tax structure. How much more successful could they be if we took off the bridle and let them run. When you look at hospital losses, I agree that, you know, there's jobs there that are a real issue, and so why do hospitals close? When you don't have strong employment gain, you tend to see decreased health in a community. And West Virginia has struggled with the health of our citizens for a while, and we've struggled with a good cross-section, diverse economy that produces jobs that produce healthy families because of the things that come along with that prosperity that comes with a job. If you have an improved economic standing, you're likely to be more healthy. The less healthy a population is, the more demand there is on the hospital system, and the less likely that they're going to get compensated for those services because of the payer mix changes. And as a result, we continue to see a decline in health of the state with loss of jobs. The counties that, and I have one of those counties, Putnam County, for instance, that is one of those top receiving states off the manufacturing equipment and inventory tax. And Putnam County, we have a very happy, healthy, growing, one of the few growing counties in West Virginia. That tax is an impediment to our growth. It doesn't facilitate it. It's an impediment. And the fact that the Constitution will be amended, so what has to happen there? This body requires 2/3. And it says that we're going to put it on the ballot so that the people of West Virginia can decide whether or not they want their Constitution amended. And should that happen, it does not indicate, it doesn't mean that there's going to be a loss of tax that comes in or loss of revenue that comes into these counties. In fact, the legislature come around and appropriate those monies to make sure that those counties are okay. And that can absolutely be done. I've said it before on this floor. It's not a fiscal issue to get it done. It is absolutely political. And we have to get past the political side to get it done for the people of West Virginia. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further remarks? The senator from Harrison County. Before the senator recognizes senators for Harrison County, does the senior senator from the 15th seek recognition? All right. Senator from Harrison County.
I think he decided to abandon ship before I got started, Mr. President. I don't blame the senator. Don't blame the senator. You know, I want to rise up because, you know, you just got to correct inaccuracies. There's no Democrat over here that doesn't think getting rid of the business personal property tax is a good idea. It's a gross income tax. You got to pay it whether or not you make money. But we're not going to get rid of it recklessly. We're not going to do it without a replacement for that income for our counties and public schools. We can sit here and promise all we want that we're going to make it up out of the general fund. General fund's worse than my checkbook. At least I know what I'm going to have in it next year. We don't know about the general fund. You know, 36 states have some form of business personal property tax on machinery and heavy equipment and inventory, according to the National Tax Foundation. But you know, before the current majority took over in 2015, the Democrats had just lowered business taxes almost $400 million. Since then, we've decreased them another over $200 million. Where are all the businesses? How many times do we have to pony up and get down on our knees in front of business to ask for jobs in West Virginia? Come on, you all have been through this with me. You've seen the same thing. Those tax cuts that happened prior to 2015, there was not one new private job created out of it. You take out the oil and gas pipeline boom, which is about over, and we've lost employment. When we did those severance tax cuts, which we could have done great things with that money, not one new steam coal mine or coal miner job. Sure, there's been metallurgical coal, but it's different, and we all know that. If it's such a good idea to lower these taxes, why don't we just get rid of all the taxes? Why don't we just get rid of them all and see how much business comes running across our border? Because you know what? It has nothing to do with the amount of taxes. As I've told you many times, all of the
tax creation that I've been lucky to be a part of, nobody's ever said our taxes were out of control. And just remember, prior to 2015, we had one of the lowest unemployment rates in the country. Sure, our unemployment's low now because we've lost over 57,000 people since 2015. That's the longest string of population losses in West Virginia history, I'm told. We had nearly $1 billion in a savings account. We had reduced taxes over $500 million. We had paid our OPEB liability, still the only state to do so as far as I know. We had moved our retirement funds from the 50th worst funded to the 20th best. We had the 17th lowest tax state in the nation, according to the National Tax Foundation again. We had one of the highest credit ratings in the country. We had been in the top 10 cheapest states to do business for the past decade, and we had the 39th lowest number of civil lawsuits in the country. Not bad. I'm not saying it's gotten any worse, but what I am saying is that continually cutting taxes irresponsibly is a loser's proposition. Sure, it's on somebody's checklist, ALEC or the U.S. Chamber, just like the Intermediate Court of Appeals. Means nothing, cost us money, but yet we're going to check that box because we get down on our knees in front of business when they dangle a job out in front of us, but they don't have anything to do with bringing jobs to our state. We have to worry about an educated workforce. We have to worry about educating our children. We have to worry about getting our state healthy. We have to worry about finding places for business to establish and build in our state. That's what will bring jobs to West Virginia, not lowering our taxes even lower and depriving our people of the services that's driving them out of our state. Let's stop doing it. Thank you.
Further remarks, the senior senator from the 5th.
Request unanimous consent that the remarks by the senator from Ohio be placed in the appendix of the journal.
Without objection, so ordered. Senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to weigh in for a little bit on this issue. My senior senator from the 15th left the room, but in his absence, I would be compelled to say, and am compelled to say, that we need in West Virginia to rebuild our manufacturing economic sector. It is absolutely critical to the future of the state. The ad valorem tax on machinery, equipment, and inventory, as pointed out by the senator from Putnam County in West Virginia, is out of sync. It's out of sync with our surrounding states, and it makes us anti-competitive. The senator from Harrison County acknowledged as much. I think he acknowledged the problems with that tax. Now, having said that, I will concede that I agree with the remarks by the senator from Ohio County. Those ad valorem taxes are collected by local school districts and county commissions, primarily some municipalities. And it is critically important that this legislature, if it's going to propose a reduction in that tax, figure out a way to hold those political subdivisions harmless, keep them whole. I would not favor doing anything to the ad valorem tax on machinery, equipment, inventory, motor vehicles. We've talked about that too. If we can't find a way to protect county school boards, county commissions, municipalities who rely on that for their operations. But because it's hard doesn't mean we can't do it. Because it may be difficult, Mr. President, doesn't mean we shouldn't rise to the challenge and try to figure out a way to do it. We have been blessed in West Virginia with natural resources by the Almighty. One of the consequences of our reliance on the extractive industries is the severance tax roller coaster. It places us at the mercy of the market. The building of a manufacturing base, the rebuilding, because we had one. We had one in West Virginia. We had one of the best in the country, and others have talked about it. The senator from Braxton talked about it not long ago on the floor of this Senate. We had glass works. We had chemical works. We had a strong manufacturing base in this state. We need to create the climate where that can arise again, while holding harmless and making sure that we don't hurt or hamstring counties, county governments, school districts. I believe within this body there is the talent and wisdom for all of us working together in bipartisan fashion to figure out a way to do it that's logical, that's sensible, that doesn't hurt our counties, municipalities, these local political subdivisions, which provide great service to the citizens of this state. I'm not willing to rule it out, Mr. President. We should. That's what we're here for. We're here to look for the answers. And I believe that what we can do to bolster manufacturing in this state, bolster a climate that would allow a manufacturing economy to come back in this state, will pay dividends for all of West Virginia for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks, the junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think what I'm hearing from all members of the Senate is that we pretty much agree. It's just how we get there. I agree with my friends all around the Senate that I think the people of West Virginia expect us to do something. When we go out and about, they all say that you got to do something about jobs, you got to do something about manufacturing, and there's all kinds of ways to spin things, and I'm not saying it's purely conjecture. Some of it's true, some of it's not. But every law, every bill, I think there has to be a component of common sense to this. And when I drive in any direction, east, west, north, south, and you look at the flat land, you look at the different things that those states have that give them a leg up on us, when you throw a extra heavy tax on any manufacturer that comes in, why in the world would he choose to come here? I mean, that's just the common sense piece of it, and I think every piece of legislation, you got to look at the common sense piece of it. If I'm a company and I'm going to have to pay a heavy tax in every state around, or not pay a tax in every state around us, but you do us, that's a major inhibitor. That's just a common sense piece of it. So there's all these other things that we can do. Now, I agree that we can hurt our municipalities, we can do all that, but we have to be creative. Earlier in the session so far, I've heard that health is a huge issue. I'm going to have, we'll propose a tax soon on increasing the tobacco tax. You know, in 2015 we fought for this, and I know that's unpopular with a lot of colleagues in this chamber, especially across the House, but the fact is, every state that's ever done this, you know, when you talk about companies, when you talk about business, health is a major issue. You know, manufacturing tax is one big thing. I can tell you another big checkbox that probably shies people away from West Virginia is the fact that how unhealthy we are and what their health insurance premiums are going to be when they come to this state and what they're going to be paying out. Probably, truth be known, a bigger inhibitor than the manufacturing tax. So how do we do that? How do you kill two birds with one stone? We increase the tobacco tax, and this is just an example, but we did do this in 2015. I think if you go back and replay the tapes, I've often mentioned the study from WU said we'd have a $244 million savings of the Medicaid line. We saw $350 actually is what it's looking like. Crank that up. Our kids are sick. They're vaping left and right. So one of the tools in the toolbox would be to crank that tax up, make our state healthier, but at the same time, take that money and use it where it's more beneficial, like maybe getting rid of taxes, which is hurting our manufacturing, hurting our jobs, hurting our business climate. So I think we can all work together. I think we're all on the same page. It's just a matter of how we get there. So every ideal needs to be ponied up, and I would encourage that from each and every member. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Further remarks, the senator from Logan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I first want to thank all the members here for their creative thinking. We all want a better tax structure for the business community. I'll give you that. But let's examine just for a moment, how bad is the business climate here in West Virginia? According to the Tax Foundation, a Washington think tank, our business ranking is 17 out of 50. And I want to give credit to the majority party because I'm very pro-business, and some of the things you all have done over the past few years have been very positive for business, and I want to thank you for that personally. I think a lot of good work has been done. But let's stop for a minute and reset. The reason that we're not growing businesses in West Virginia is not because of the business climate. It is because we rank so terribly in other very important sectors. According to U.S. News and World Report, we rank number 48 in healthcare, number 50 in economy, number 50 in infrastructure. Now, we rank 17th in business climate, and we're wanting to help them more. Should we not reset and focus in the areas where we're so distraught and depressed? We've got it backwards. We've got it completely backwards. I have been blessed beyond measure to deal with a lot of large companies in my prior employment. Fortune 5, Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies. The reason they're not coming to West Virginia, and Department of Commerce has dealt with this for years, they can't get their people from point A to point B. It doesn't make business sense with respect to air travel because ours is somewhat depressed. You can't get here. And then they look at quality of life issues. We're working on education collectively and in a bipartisan fashion, and I applaud you, Mr. President, for your efforts on that. But let's go back. Economy, 50. Infrastructure, 50. Healthcare, 48. And business climate, 17. Instead of trying to go up a couple more notches on the business climate, let's go back and do a reset and address what real West Virginians are dealing with, those problems in those three distinct categories. And I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Are there further remarks? The senator from Wood County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm excited to hear from my friends on the other side of the aisle how we've all of a sudden become one of the most prosperous economic states in the Union. This is exciting news, but I think numbers would say otherwise. We are starting to do much better than we were, but one area that we've not been doing so great in is, frankly, manufacturing. It is self-evident that, and shown to be true by empirical evidence, that the states that are the most prosperous economically are the states that cut taxes and cut spending. Everybody knows if you tax something, you're going to get less of it. You want less of something, tax it. This is an archaic tax, probably, as I've been told, the most prohibitive tax economically that we have in the state of West Virginia. Just to give an example on inventory, if a company or corporation, manufacturer, whoever wants to buy a new piece of equipment, and they spend $100,000 on that piece of equipment, and all of a sudden, the tax on that all of a sudden goes way, way up according to what they paid on it, and then lowers as it depreciates. So if you have a piece of equipment that's depreciated to almost nothing, you are disincentivized to purchase a new piece of equipment, Mr. President. This is a tax that just sucks capital out of manufacturers, out of businesses. In my own county, DuPont, one of the greatest job creators there are in my county, and of course around the world, they spend several $1 million a year on this tax. I asked them, is that pocket change for you? No, they said. That is a prohibitive tax. It's $2 million that we could create jobs, build more infrastructure, or whatever. This is another friend of mine who just started a business in Wood County 4 or 5 years ago. At the end of every year, he goes around his business, he counts his inventory, Mr. President, and then he sends a check to the state. Now, I understand the counties get this too, but he sends a check for $30,000 that he could have either A, put in his pocket, B, given to employees, or C, put back into his business. We have warehouses surrounding the state of West Virginia where business has gone outside of the state of West Virginia. This is a no-brainer. This is not something difficult. We need to get rid of this tax in a bad way. West Virginia's got to build its reputation to be a job-creating state. We do not have that reputation, Mr. President. Around this country, we still, even though things have been better the last 5 years, we've been losing population for 50 years. We still do not have a good reputation for business around the country, and this will be a big deal in getting us in that direction. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Further remarks? The senator from Tucker County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief, and I really mean it. Today's day 22 of the legislative session, and the body last year, towards the end, focused it on highways. I just want to note that day 22, no highway bills has been out yet, no road repair bills has came out of committee. I was told this morning mine didn't have any interest in moving forward. The governor, when I met with the governor's office, they was against 522 last year, my bill. They had problems with it, said that they would work with us, work with me, whatever. Haven't heard anything from the governor's office on the roads bill. I'm just saying it's day 22. It's getting late in the game. It polled the second most concern of the state of West Virginia for citizens is roads. And the governor hasn't came forth with anything. We're not pushing anything. I would just like to say that I would like to see some movement on some kind of roads bill to do some mandates, accountabilities, and stuff like that. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Further remarks? Senator from Brooke County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the remarks from the Senator from Wood, the junior senator from the 17th, and the Senator from Morgan County be placed in the appendix to the journal.
Without objection, so ordered. Further remarks? Miscellaneous, the senator from Marion County.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the remarks by the senator from Harrison and the senator from Logan be put in the appendix of the journal.
Without objection, so ordered. Further remarks? Further remarks. Miscellaneous business, the junior senator from the 17th. Junior senator from the 17th first. Junior senator from the 17th.
Here, Mr. President, pending announcements, I move the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m.
I recognize the senator from Raleigh County first. I apologize.
Mr. President, I've filed a voting sentiment with the clerk.
Clerk will please read the voting sentiment.
Had Senator Roberts been present in the chamber on Monday, January 27th, he would have voted yea on the passage of the following bills: Senate Bill 8, Senate Bill 114, Senate Bill 289, Senate Bill 303, Senate Bill 357, Senate Bill 364, Senate Bill 468, Senate Bill 470, Senate Bill 487, Senate Bill 500, Senate Bill 501, Senate Bill 509.
The senator from Raleigh County.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that my voting sentiment be recorded in the journal as reported.
Is there objection? Hearing none, so ordered. Junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the pending announcements. I move the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m.
Are there announcements? The senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Two announcements. First, your committee on the judiciary will meet today at 3:00 p.m. in the Judiciary Committee Room 208 West Wing. Second announcement is just general reminder for all members of the Senate. We're approaching the deadline for financial disclosures due to the West Virginia Ethics Commission. Don't want anybody to miss the deadline by mistake.
Thank you. Further announcements. Further announcements. The senior senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to remind all the senators that the Senate Prayer Caucus is still meeting in the Senate President's Conference Room at 10:45 every day. And this Friday, we're going to have a joint prayer caucus meeting with the House in the Lewis McManus Room 252 at 10:30. And it will be every Friday after this coming Friday. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further announcements. The senator from Wyoming County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your subcommittee on Senate Bill 208 in Judiciary will meet tomorrow morning at 9:15 in room 208 West.
Further announcements. The junior senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Senate Finance Committee will meet this afternoon in the Finance Committee room at 3 p.m. for the consideration of bills and a budget presentation from the Lottery Commission and a budget presentation from the Department of Revenue. Also have a second announcement that Thursday at 10 a.m. in 208 West, we will have the Workforce Committee Subcommittee on Senate Bill 76.
The senator from Wood County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Pensions will not meet today.
Senator from Mercer County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Economic Development will meet today at 1 p.m., 208 West.
Further announcements. Senator from Ohio County.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Labor Caucus will have a lunch today at the Culture Center. Immediately following this session, there will not be a lunch tomorrow, so the lunch is today at the Culture Center. Thank you.
Further announcements. Not question before the Senate is, shall the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the Senate adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m.